Is your blog's design secretly driving visitors away? So many bloggers focus on making their blog look pretty, but great design is about so much more than aesthetics. Your blog's design affects readability, navigation, and conversions. It can help build trust, it impacts the user experience, and it helps visitors take action, like subscribing to your email list, clicking an affiliate link, or purchasing a product. But here's the problem. Too many bloggers are making critical design mistakes that confuse their readers and cost them traffic and income. Which is why I've brought on today's guest, website designer Sarah Pasiuk. With nearly a decade of experience in design, a bachelor's degree in graphic design, and a talent for creating really beautiful cadence child themes for travel bloggers, I've linked some below with a discount code. Sarah knows what it takes to create a website that is not only beautiful, but also effective. And today, she'll be sharing 5 blog design mistakes to avoid, and most importantly, how to fix them. But first, I want to direct your attention to the video description or the QR code on your screen, where I've shared a link to my free travel blogger resource library. Inside, you'll snag access to 75 plus resources, from cheat sheets to workbooks to workshops to video tutorials that can help you truly turn your blog into a profitable business, and that includes a blog design cheat sheet to pair with today's workshop. I am all about implementation, and I really want to make sure that you don't just watch this video and forget about it, but that you actually use what is shared to make your blogging life easier. Feel free to even pause this video to go grab those resources. You back? Then let's dive in.
Thank you, Jessie, for inviting me on here today to speak to your audience a little bit about design. I'm really excited to get started. So today we're going to be talking about 5 blog design mistakes to avoid and how to fix them. So before we jump right into everything, I want to take some time to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Pasiuk, and I'm a travel blogger, but I'm also a web designer at thesitestylist.co, where I work specifically within the Cadence theme page builder to help other bloggers create beautiful website designs that they feel really proud of. So today, we are going to learn about 5 common design mistakes that I see other bloggers making. And we're also going to talk through some simple fixes and how to implement them into our page builders. Now, as I mentioned, I specifically work within the Cadence theme page builder. So you'll see today throughout the presentation, as I jump into demos, that I'll be doing them directly in the Cadence theme. However, just keep in mind all of these fixes and the lingo we're going to be using, it is all going to translate into other page builders as well. If you're using the Cadence theme, you're in luck, however, because I will be doing demonstrations directly in the Cadence theme page builder. So just keep that in mind. Now, hopefully by the end of the presentation today, you'll be able to have some tangible things to take home with you that are going to help you improve readability, user experience, and engagement on your websites through your design. The first mistake I want to address today is lack of white space. This is when our text, images, or other design elements are packed a little too closely together, making our pages feel cluttered. So why is this a problem? White space gives content room to breathe, which improves its readability. Without spacing, our pages tend to feel cluttered, overwhelming, and honestly just a little unprofessional. A lack of margins or padding, which we'll talk about in a second, makes content harder to scan, which is very difficult for our audience. So how can we fix this? The first thing we can do is use row layouts to add margins and padding between sections. So let's jump into our page builders, and I'll show you exactly how to do this. So you can see I have created a new page in my WordPress dashboard for the sake of this demonstration today. And I have just a basic header, a footer, and then a row layout with a content section here. Now again, I'm specifically working with Cadence, but there are equivalents to everything I'm talking about today in other page builders as well, whether you're working with Elementor or Divi. So make sure that you're exploring your specific page builder if you don't work directly in Cadence to make these fixes as we go through them today. So in order to create spacing within a row layout to break up your content sections, you need to make sure your row layout is selected. Click on Settings and go to this Advanced tab here. You can see right away I have my padding and margin options here. Now the difference between padding and margin is pretty simple. Padding refers to the spacing within the block you're using, so in this case our row layout block, whereas margin refers to the spacing on the outside of the block that we have selected. So in order to create more white space on the top and bottom of this row layout here, I'm going to be working with my padding. Now in Cadence, there's two ways to do this. We can either roll our cursor over the green highlighted section here, click on it and pull it down, which is going to increase that white space on the top or the bottom, or you can go directly into the box here and increase that spacing with the dial. Now you can see just by increasing the white on the top and bottom, we already have a much more breathable content section here. So again, this is how you increase your spacing within that row layout. The next thing you can do is adjust your column gutters to create more space. A lot of times I'll see people, pair an image with content and they're just kind of encroaching on each other, and it's really hard to read. So similar to how you see here, you can see I have literally no spacing between my two columns. To fix this, again, make sure your row layout is selected, go into settings, and you'll see in this layout tab that I have column gutter settings here. As I increase that column gutter, it's just going to create more space between my image and my text, which again just makes it more readable, breathable, and visually appealing. And finally, avoid big blocks of text. You can see in the demo page here, I've split my body text up into 3 sections. This is much easier to skim than it would be if it was just one big block of text. So again, minimize those reading margins to help your reader skim your page a little bit easier. So go through your site and add breathing room. Use your spacing to improve its readability for better user experience. The second design mistake we're going to talk about today is lack of contrast. And this is when text or other design elements blend into the background or against one another, making content really difficult to read. Now, this can relate to your colors, but it can also relate to the fonts and the difference between the fonts that you're selecting. So why is this a problem? Readers will struggle to see content if there's not enough contrast. This causes poor accessibility issues where users with visual impairments are going to struggle to navigate the content. It's also really bad for SEO. Key elements like buttons, links, and CTAs are going to fail to stand out unless you have enough contrast to make them pop. So how do we fix this? The first thing we can do is simplify our color palette. Instead of just choosing a bunch of different colors just because we like them or want a really colorful palette, maybe we start by having 2 very obvious contrasting colors to use. Here's an example of many colors but not enough contrast. You can see that these colors are very beautiful, but if we were to layer them on top of one another, there's not going to be enough contrast to make it readable, especially for anyone who's visually impaired. We can simplify this by choosing 2, or at least starting with 2, high contrasting colors. And you can always build from there. I think it's just good to know for certain that you have ones that are going to work together nicely. Now here are just some good and bad examples of poor contrast and good contrast. You can see that blue on black obviously doesn't work very well together and it's very hard to read, whereas something like yellow on black is a lot more readable. Now, the second thing we can do is check your font choices and sizes. You can see that the size of our headings, the boldness of our headings against the choices we make with our body text makes a huge difference in separating the two from each other, making things a lot more skimmable and readable for your audience. So you can see the ones over here on the left-hand side, there's difference in sizing, but the contrast isn't as obvious as the ones you see here on the right. So I would shoot for something more like this, where we have very obvious differences between our header and our body text. Now, one thing to note is when you're selecting fonts within WordPress, I would check the heading font you're going for and make sure it can actually be boldened. There are some typography choices that actually don't allow you to increase the boldness. And I think this can really affect how readable our design is, right? So again, make sure it can be boldened just so you have that option to increase that contrast even more. Now, the other thing you can do is stick to dark text on a light background or vice versa. Now, I already showed you examples of this, but this is definitely something to keep in mind as I see this often, especially with info boxes. Many bloggers like to use big, bold colors for their info boxes, which makes perfect sense. As like a call to action. But again, we want to make sure there's enough contrast for it to actually be readable, or why would people click on it, you know? The next thing you can do is add overlays on background images to ensure text stands out. I'm going to show you how to do this really quick in Cadence. So going back into that demo page we were working with, you can see that I have this big image in the background here with a white text over it. Now, while I can read this, I personally don't think there's enough contrast here for it to be readable or as visually appealing as it could be. So I'm going to add an overlay. And to do that, you want to make sure you click into your row layout where I have my background image inserted. You're going to go into Settings, Style, and then you can scroll down to where it says Background Overlay Settings. Go to Overlay Color, select the color. I'm going to use black because I have white text. And then you can increase the opacity of that overlay color to create more contrast between the image and the text. And this is a great option if you like to use images as backgrounds, because it's going to separate the text on top of it even more from the image while still allowing the image to be there. You can also do this by adding maybe black text instead, with a white background overlay, again, just to increase that contrast. But you can see it's way more readable when we have that overlay in place, and it allows you to keep the image there while still maintaining that contrast between the title and the image. So hopefully that's helpful. So take action by having someone else scan through your site to make sure everything is easy to read. There's also a great website you can go to color check certain colors in your color palette to make sure they're compatible with one another when it comes to contrast. You can see, let me find it here. This is the colors.com contrast checker, where you can insert two different colors and it'll give you a rating on how compatible they are with each other and how readable they are against each other. Okay, design mistake number 3, too many gimmicks. Overusing flashy effects, excessive animations, drop shadows, or even fancy fonts makes your site look unprofessional, right? If everything is standing out, then nothing will. So why is this a problem? This distracts from the content, right? If everything is moving, glowing, or sliding, nothing is going to stand out, and we need to be strategic about how we're navigating our audience throughout our site. It also slows down site speed, which hurts SEO and user experience. Overall, it feels unorganized and lacks intention. And typically, it just looks unprofessional. So how do we fix this? The first thing we can do is keep animations minimal and purposeful. I recommend limiting any kind of hover effect or animation to clickable elements across your site, specifically CTAs. This is going to reinforce what elements of your site your audience can engage with, and again, just help them navigate across your site easier. Be consistent with how you're using hover effects. You don't need a spinning border and then a drop shadow and then a change in color. I think keeping it to a minimum and then reinforcing those same effects throughout your site is going to be best practice here. When it comes to fonts, stick to 2 to 3 fonts max and avoid overly decorative ones. It's okay to use script fonts as accent fonts for certain text throughout your site, but only use one, and definitely don't use it for your headers or your body text. Using a serif or sans serif font for those is perfect. You don't need overly decorative fonts to stand out, but you can use them as accents. Again, if you are using a decorative font, just limit it to one paired with your header and your body text font. And limit outsourced media. This one can be a little bit controversial because I know Other software like Canva, for example, can be really great and easy to work with when it comes to designing certain things for your site. But I would highly recommend learning your page builder from the inside out so that you can do most of your designing within the page builder itself instead of designing with a different software and bringing it into your page builder. When we're using other software to design certain elements of our site, it's not going to look as cohesive as it would if we were just designing directly within our page builder. Now, don't get me wrong, it can be really great for certain things, but limiting it as much as possible is going to be best practice and make your site look a little bit more cleaned up and professional. So, simplify your design. Less is more when it comes to special effects. There's definitely a place for them, but you don't need an animation on your images and then a scroll effect in your background. I think, again, less is more, and that's a great place to start. Okay, design mistake number 4, unclear call to action. This is when there are no obvious next steps to follow for your audience to engage with your content. Why is this a problem? When we don't have clear CTAs, readers don't know where to go next or how to engage with you on your site. Hidden or weak CTAs lower conversions and site engagement. So when we're designing content sections on our pages, we want to make sure that we are designing really efficient CTAs that are very obvious to our readers and navigate them successfully throughout our site. So how do we fix this? Make sure each section of your homepage specifically has some kind of CTA that clearly directs readers to related content. So on your homepage, if below your header you're creating an About Me section, we should have a very obvious next steps kind of button or something that navigates them from that homepage to maybe your About page and so on. Use color or hover effects for buttons to help them stand out. Now again, we don't want to be too gimmicky, but CTAs are a great place to use effects or animations to make them very obvious to readers that they are clickable. Another thing you can do is be more specific with the language on your buttons specifically. Instead of just saying click here, maybe we say something like explore more or explore Italy or learn more about me or see more posts. I think the more specific we are with our language, the more obvious it's going to communicate to the reader what that next step is and how they can further engage with you. And be consistent. I think it's great to have multiple options for info boxes, for example, because you want to know which kinds of info boxes have the greater conversions, but you don't want to have so many different info box designs or button designs that it gets just confusing and inconsistent to the audience. You want to make sure that your reader knows when they're looking at a button or a clickable element. The best way to do that is to make sure they're branded and again, just consistently used throughout your site. So, simplify your CTAs and make it obvious what you want your readers to do next. Okay, mistake number 5 and the last one on this list, not optimizing for mobile. Now, your blog design might look great on desktop, but sometimes can translate as like unreadable on our mobile site, whether the text is too small, images don't fit, or even the menus are harder to navigate. Now, most page builders automatically do this for you. But the mistake that I see often is people don't manually go into their mobile page builders and make these subtle changes and tweaks that are going to make your mobile site even easier to navigate for user experience. Now, why is this a problem? More than 60% of web traffic comes from our mobile devices. So you can have a beautifully designed desktop website, but if it's not easy to navigate on mobile, then for 60% of your audience, it's not going to matter. Poor mobile design really hurts SEO and lowers our rankings on Google. So how do we fix this? Use responsive controls in your page editors to adjust font sizes, image placement, and spacing for mobile. Now again, a lot of page builders do this automatically to the best of their ability, but it's really important to go in and check it manually to make sure it looks as good as it possibly can for your mobile readers. Make sure buttons are large enough to tap with your finger. Sometimes they translate too small or may be hard to read with small text. So definitely double check your CTAs and clickable things on your mobile site. And again, make sure your text sizes are still easy to read on mobile while also maintaining enough contrast to keep your site skimmable even on a mobile device. Make sure your row layouts translate well to vertical design on mobile. I'll show you how to do this really quickly. So when we're designing with a row layout, for example, obviously we're designing in columns, and this doesn't translate into a mobile design because our site on mobile is vertical. So to fix this, you want to make sure you go into that mobile editor, into settings, and you adjust the columns how you want. So for example, maybe it's not best for user experience to have the image come up before the text. To fix this, click into your row layout, go to the layout tab in settings, and change your collapse order to reverse, and this will switch the order of the columns and how they appear on mobile. And now you can see the heading is going to come before the image, which is going to be better for the user. So again, it's really important to manually go into your mobile editor and make these changes for better user experience. Always preview your blog on mobile and make necessary adjustments manually. I also recommend publishing your pages and checking it on the live view on your phone to make sure everything is translating correctly. Okay, so our key takeaways from today are: give your sections room to breathe by adding space. Pay attention to contrast between your fonts, colors, and backgrounds. Use CTAs effectively so readers know exactly what to do and how to navigate across your site. Ditch the gimmicks, focus on simple modern design principles. And manually optimize your mobile view for ultimate user experience. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Hopefully you found this helpful, and thank you for having me.
All right, now I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you feel inspired and empowered to design a blog that is not only pretty, but also effective. Don't forget to grab access to the free Travel Blogger Resource Library linked in the video description or via the QR code on your screen. There are a ton of resources in there on growing your community and increasing your blogging profits, including a blog design cheat sheet based on today's workshop. And of course, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos sharing these strategies for bloggers who want to turn their blogs into profitable full-time businesses. Happy blogging!